and let us exalt his name together. In Matthew, the 18th chapter, the 20th verse, Jesus said, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there will I be in the midst of them. The word of the Lord told us also in 2 Timothy 3:15, but if I tarry long, as the great apostle Paul, who spent most of his ministry behind bars, and wrote most of the Pauline epistles while he was incarcerated, he said, if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God. We are assembling. It's our God-given command. There is an Antichrist spirit that is coming against the church in this hour. In 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter and the 5th verse, the Apostle Paul said, don't you remember that when I was with you, I told you these things would come? And he said, only he, the Antichrist, who now will let until he be taken out of the way. The church is the last force that is resisting the Antichrist from setting up his kingdom on this earth. I say that the church be the church. Let's assemble as free people and worship God in spirit and in truth, regardless of what anyone says we can or cannot do. Alexander Hamilton said, a people that can prefer disgrace to danger are headed for a master and deserve one. We are willing, Acts 15 and 26, to hazard our lives for the gospel of Jesus Christ's sake. We are not martyrs. We are not looking for attention. But I stand in this pulpit today, in our pulpit at Life Tabernacle Church of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as an apostolic Pentecostal who has given a mandate from God Almighty in the laying on of hands of the presbytery, who has ordained me to preach. And they gave me not a suggestion and not a supposition, but a command to preach the word of God, to be instant in season and out of season, without fear and without favor, declare the whole counsel of God to the whole world. And we ought to obey God rather than man. Give me a man of God, one man, whose faith is master of his mind, and I will right all wrongs and bless the name of all mankind. Give me a man of God, one man, whose tongue is touched with heaven's fire, and I'll flame the darkest of hearts with high resolve and clean desire. Give me a man of God, one man, true to the vision that he sees, and I will build nations' broken altars and bring families to their knees. Give me one man, just one man that will stand up. And we say that we are those people today. The word of the Lord tells us in Matthew 24 and 8, these pestilences are just the beginning of sorrows. In the beginning of this trial in our great nation, we were told this would only be for a week or two. We continued to assemble. Now we have it on good faith that this will go into the summer and perhaps the fall. This is just the beginning of sorrows, America. This is just the beginning of sorrows to every born-again Christian, regardless of your affiliation. We tell you the doors that are closed across our nation. People have driven in from Minnesota and Illinois and Washington State and Florida and Georgia to come and worship with us because you want to worship like free men. We prefer to hazard our lives. Neither the pressure of our friends, our family, the threat of lawsuit, nor imprisonment, nor death will stop us from our God-given command to assemble. Because when we assemble, as we are right now, and everyone is in social distancing compliance, as we are in every service, this Sunday we plan on having over 1,000 people in attendance, spread out over 7 different sanctuaries on these 34 acres, segregated by age and gender, as we do 52 weeks a year, regardless of storms, floods, fires, or pestilences. we will be in social compliance. To anyone that would ask me, why are you still having church? My question is to you, why are you not having church? We are breaking no laws. We are breaking no mandates. We have a mandate from God Almighty to go to the house of God and sing the praises of God. We have a weak nation. I want to tell every employer in this city who has terminated number 6 from our congregation, you have terminated them from their job. You have fired them and persecuted them for the faith. They refuse to deny Jesus Christ before you. They would rather deny you than they had Jesus Christ. And because of that, God is going to bless them. I tell you, may God have mercy on your soul for you having persecuted the members of this church. They will assemble with us. At this time, everybody said amen. Amen. Psalm 27:4. One thing have I desired of the Lord, and that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. No man can take this light from us. At this time, the Honorable Judge Moore and his wife have driven in from Birmingham, and he is coming to make a statement. Several attorneys may or may not speak in this conference today. None of them represent me as of yet. They speak only on behalf of my defense in good faith, because these men believe in the stance that we have taken in our convictions. So let's stand and make welcome the Honorable Judge Roy Moore to this pulpit today. God bless you in Jesus' name.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the attendance and appreciate Pastor Melvin's invitation to come down to Baton Rouge. I've certainly enjoyed seeing Baton Rouge again. It was 35 years ago. My wife and I came down on a trip to Texas. We went to Baton Rouge, and I remember it very well. It was a very special time. As is this a special time. Can y'all hear me? Okay. You know, I could begin in several ways. I could begin with Scripture, I could begin with the law. But I chose to begin with a song called Chester in the 1700s. You might not have heard it, but it's by William Billings. It was a song of the Revolution, which I think is pertinent today. And I'll just repeat the phrases. Let tyrants shake their iron rods, and slavery clank her galling chains. We fear them not, we trust in God. New England's God forever reigns. This country is so special. I enjoyed coming down here to talk and not represent anybody at this time, but to talk about the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. That First Amendment begins like this. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech or of the press, or right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. In the situation we see here with the pastor, there is no more clear violation of the First Amendment than this prohibition to assemble in a church. I want you to know that the Texas government has opened up churches for worship. No social distancing, nothing. Assembling in a church. And just today, Florida did the same thing. Hallelujah. I'm telling you, Louisiana is situated between Texas and Florida. Louisiana ought to do the same thing. It is very wrong for anybody to issue an order that you can't assemble in church. It violates the First Amendment. It violates separation of church and state. This country was founded on the fact that historically, there was a time in history where the church dictated to the state. Martin Luther came along and said, something seems wrong here. We all have a Bible. We can interpret it. We can read it. They put out a bull. It was protected by one of the princes of Germany. After that, the kings of England and others started dictating to the Church of England, which church would be primary in the kingdom. And the Pilgrims and the Puritans didn't like that. They didn't like to be told how to worship God, so they came to America, and their first basic premise was that we don't want anybody telling us how to worship God. The word religion, which everybody in public seems to miss today and interpret it as God, is not God. It was the duties we owe to God, our Creator, and the manner of His judgment. That's clear throughout legal history. It's clear with Madison, his moral remonstrance. It was clear in 1879 in U.S. versus Reynolds, where they defined the word. It's clear in Webster's Dictionary, the duties we owe to the Creator and manner of His charge. And if you put that in that First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of the duties you owe to the Creator and manner of discharging or prohibiting free exercise of the duties you owe to our Creator and manner of discharging. We've got to remember that the First Amendment exists because we can worship God the way we want. And no government can come in and tell you you can't assemble in church. Show me the law. There is no law. This is an order for the governor. And under Louisiana law, he is required to recognize the Bill of Rights. And religious freedom. There is no law. And if there were a law, it certainly wouldn't be applied discriminately as it is today. Go right down the street. Look at your public stores. Look at your public shopping areas. Food markets. Walmart. I won't go into naming of the stores. I'm not against the stores. But what lets them assemble and then people come in to wear a mask? But like people in God, this is not the first time we've had epidemics. We've had bubonic plagues, typhoid, smallpox, yellow fever. You know, yellow fever, they didn't close the church. Cholera in 1849. 150,000 people died in America. Zachary Taylor was the president. 5,000 died in New York. 3,000 New Orleans. St. Louis had 5,000. Chicago, 3,500. New Orleans, 3,000. 150,000 people died. And on July 3rd, 1849, Zachary Taylor issued a proclamation. And listen to what he said, because this, I think, is very important. It is fitting that the people whose reliance has ever been in his protection should humble themselves before his throne. And while acknowledging past transgressions, ask for a continuance of divine mercy. Listen to this. It is recommended to persons of all religious denominations to abstain, as far as practical, from secular occupations, and to assemble in their respective places of public worship, to acknowledge the infinite goodness which has watched over our existence as a nation and so long crowned us with merciful, manifold blessings, and implore the Almighty in His own good time to stay the restoring hand which is now lifted up against us. Pastor's right. God is more essential to our life than anything. That's why President Washington, in his first proclamation said, whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. We've got to recognize that no earthly power can come into the church and dictate you can't assemble.
Yeah.
Period.
Hallelujah.
It may seem like a good thing. It may seem like a good thing to them, but God's providence controls everything.
Right.
For people to be turning to God is altogether fitting and proper. We should do this.
Yeah.
We do it all the time, and we don't really pledge allegiance. In 1954, when they put under God the pledge, they didn't even want to put a comma between the words under God and nation. And it's specifically written in the legislative history. One nation under God. They also address the word religion. It should be pointed out that the adoption of this legislation in no way runs contrary to provisions of the First Amendment. This is not an act establishing religion, or one interfering with the free exercise of religion. A distinction must be made between the existence of religion as an institution and a belief in the sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that sovereignty is being violated. It's being violated right here in Louisiana. It's being violated in Alabama. It's being violated by de Blasio in New York. The Virginia governor is threatened fines and punishments. We've got to do what the Bible says. Find the brethren to be strong in the Lord.
Yeah.
This fight. And we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
Yeah.
Therefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand an evil day, and having done all to stand. And that's our duty. Our duty is to stand. And when our life is over, the battle is over, the victory is won. And through all the earth is praise and ring. And all the heavenly angels sing. It will be enough just to see the Son and hear Him say, my child was loved. You kept my faith so strong and true. I knew that I could count on you. I can't tell you enough. I could quote to you for hours. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. They all said first, before any person could be a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe. And every member of civil society who enters into any associate subordination must do it with the reservation of his duty to the general authority. Much more must any man who becomes a member of any particular civil society do it with the saving of his allegiance to the universal sovereign. We maintain, therefore, that in matters of religion, no man's right is free from the institution of religion. That religion is wholly exempt from its cognizance. You know what that means? That means that civil government can't use an excuse like social distancing, wearing masks to come in to a place because it's here people worship. I'm going to tell you, our forefathers believed that this was the healing place, not a church. God's all wise. When we forget that, we've forgotten God. We've forgotten the gracious hand that preserves us in peace and multiplied His mission and strengthened us. When we vainly imagine and deceit from His own hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with earthly success, we become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to God who made us. As the pastor pointed out, in the Bible it's written, forsake not yourselves, assemble one with another, and exhort each other.
Yeah.
Live streaming, that's what the church wants to do, that's their business. But you can't do sacraments in live streaming.
No.
You can't lay on hands in live streaming.
No.
You can't pray. together to praise God and ask for His merciful hand of protection. Man doesn't run this government. They're not going to stop a virus. God will.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes, He will.
You know, we've had epidemics emerging in 1796. In 1796, they had a yellow fever in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was where the government was assembled. There was no Washington, D.C. at that time. They met there. That's where Washington was. That's where Jefferson was. And all of a sudden, they started getting yellow fever, and people were dying in every home. The town was composed of about 50,000. 5,000 eventually died, 1/10 of the population. Nearly every house had a dead body in it. One person stayed, was the signer of the Declaration of Independence, Dr. Benjamin Rush. All the colonists left Philadelphia. One person stayed to minister to the people. He saved about 6,000 lives, they say. He caught yellow fever, and he was healed.
Praise God.
That's what we need to do today. We need to depend on God, not man's ingenuity.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't close the churches, by the way.
No.
And throughout our history, churches have never been closed. Let me tell you what's happening. So I want all the liberal people to know we know what's going on.
No.
This is just an attempt. Just an attempt to begin a precedent whereby churches will be closed for other reasons.
Right.
I mean about sodomy, or homosexuality, or gay marriage. I don't want anybody to think I'm off base on this.
You're not.
I'm simply saying this is the beginning of closing of churches. And when pastors sit back, unlike this pastor, I'm going to say this very plainly, unlike this pastor, and say, oh, well, we've got to follow the government. Till we follow the government in other areas soon.
Come on.
In Washington's own words in his farewell address, the president must always greatly overbalance and permanent evil any partial or transient benefit which the user can any time yield. In other words, he may seem like a good thing, but it will always result in a permanent evil. That permanent evil is the intrusion on God's sovereignty.
Yes. Come on.
The state has no business interfering with the church. That's a basic church state. And all of you have been in society and you've seen where they prohibit Bibles in the public. You've seen where they're taking 10 commandments out of the courthouses. You see that. Why? They say separation of church and state. Nothing separates you from God. Separation of church and state actually recognizes there is a God who ordained two separate spheres and did not let them be interfering with each other. But the church was the influence, the morality of the state. But the state had no influence on the church to prohibit the way we worship God. I'm here just to help people understand what I know about the Constitution and the First Amendment. And I can tell you very plainly that what's going on here is a sign of things to come. And unless we act properly,
Come on.
take a firm stand, it will be worse. This God is over this.
Yes, He is.
He's over this. He sees the virus, if you will. We've been through, it amazes me that they won't leave abortion clinics open. Do you know how many children die every day? Every day? 852,000 in 2018. You divide that out, it's about 2,300 or so. Every day
Yes.
in our country. And that's an essential business. They have a right. Look at what they're doing and look who opposes you. This morning, yesterday, my wife told me Twitter lit up when I introduced a statement last week. don't quarantine our Constitution or our religious liberty. They hate it.
Yeah.
I've been through it. I know what this pastor's going through. He needs your support.
Yeah.
It's hard to stand alone. But when the church stands with him, we will win. And I think that's a sign of what's happening in Florida and Texas. They know the truth.
Come on.
Maybe Louisiana will wake up.
Yeah. Come on. Come on.
I won't delay further. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you, Your Honor, Judge Moore, and your beautiful wife for making the trip down here yesterday from Alabama and speaking on our behalf in defense of our religious liberties. One question has come to me from someone in the news who is not inside of this building. The reason they're not inside of this building is because their employers told them their health would be compromised if they came inside of this building.
The safest place in the world.
This is the safest place in the world. Pastor Spell, what are you going to do when people in your congregation get sick and die? I respond with the word of the Lord. Number one, how do you prove that they contracted the virus in this congregation? If you go anywhere other than this congregation, then you cannot prove that you ever contracted the virus. The virus is attracted to fear.
Yes.
And we are fearless people, as Jesus Christ was. But my answer to that is I'll let the lawyers argue that from a legal standpoint. From a biblical standpoint, Psalm the 23rd chapter, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Paul said to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. He said, if the earthly house of this tabernacle is dissolved by COVID-19, I have a building of God and a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. That's why the Apostle Paul ran and put his head on the chopping block and said, take my life so I can go home and be with Jesus. 11 of the 12 disciples died martyrs' deaths. Because rats always abandon a sinking ship. Chuck Colson. He would not abandon his faith nor his convictions. Neither will we abandon our faith or convictions. I'll stand here today. If you have another question, bring that up. I know that you're 100 yards from me. We apologize. We apologize to every member of my church in this city, 9,800 people on our church roster who have letters in this church, who have been intimidated and bullied by threats that the National Guard is going to come in here and break us up. That will not happen. I apologize to every member of this church who has been fired from your job because your face was seen in this church. We apologize to you. Yet you are a hero of the faith because you would not repent. History talks about Polycarp. Polycarp was a martyr for the gospel's sake. They built fire around him. They tied him to a stake. The fire did not consume him, so they pierced him with a sword. His blood ran down and put out the fire, but still he praised the Lord. All these years we served him. He's never done us wrong. So why should we repent? Why should we recant? Because God has been good to us. To those, the next question is, aren't you ashamed that you're breaking the law? Should Amram and Jochebed, the mother and father of Moses, have been ashamed when they disobeyed the law of King Pharaoh, who said murder their baby boys? The 2.5 million Israelite slaves who were emancipated after 430 years were set free because of an 80-year-old man whose parents were not afraid of the king's command. Should Daniel have succumbed and quit praying for 30 days? He did not. He went into his house. He opened his window eastward. He did not stop assembling. He did not stop praying. But he opened his window and he shouted, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And I love you, God, with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. We will not stop. We will not stop congregating. We will not stop because we have a mandate from God. If another attorney would like to speak, you may stand. Come to this time.
Fix the microphone for us.
Attorney Jeff Whittenbrick, local of Baton Rouge, who is also with Judge Roy Moore of the Roy Moore Law Foundation as a representative. Let's make him welcome with a hand clap.
Got a call about this situation, and I hesitated. I hesitated thinking about my law firm. I hesitated thinking about perhaps consequences that may happen for appearing with the judge or for standing with Pastor Spell. Now, I have to tell you, hearing Pastor Spell and hearing Judge Moore here today, I repent of that hesitancy.
Amen.
Proud to be here today and proud to be affiliated in any way with Judge Moore. We are here as local counsel for him. We're helping in any way and proud to do it. I want to add to something the judge said and to tell you all today that there are no constitutional rights. If I say that again, I'm talking to my Boy Scouts. There's no such thing as a constitutional right. Our rights come from, and our founding fathers believed, our rights come from God. And I refer to all our rights as constitutionally protected rights. And that's what they are. They're protected by our Constitution, but they're God-given. And I want to say I got a call that said that somebody had turned off the water to this church.
They did.
Now that was an offense to me as a lawyer, as an American. It violates everything with regard to due process of law. It was a wrongful eviction. And fortunately, the pastor said, hey, we called our parishioners, and they called the people responsible, and we didn't have to fight that battle. That was right. I just want to thank you for the honor of being here and say that certainly stand with you, with Judge Moore and Pastor Spell through this battle. Thank you very much.
Attorney Joe Long, civil rights attorney, native of Baton Rouge. Let's make him welcome with a hand clap.
Hello to everyone. Thank you for coming out in support of Reverend Spell. We are here today because Reverend Spell's fight is your fight as well.
Come on.
Reverend Spell is standing up for his liberty, his religious liberty, and the religious liberty of the flock, his flock. He ministers to this congregation. This fight is their fight, and it should be your fight too.
Yeah.
In times of peace and prosperity, often people forget about the church.
But in times of crisis and emergency, the church is more needed than ever. The last emergency that we had in Baton Rouge was the Great Flood of 2016. Did this church turn its back on its flock? No, it did not. Even though there was over 2 feet of water in this church, Pastor Spell knew his duty to his congregation and his God, and he soldiered on. He ministered to his flock. He cared for them in a time of greatest sorrow in their emergency, and he will not turn his back on his flock now. The people of this congregation have a great need for religious instruction, ministry, and counseling. They're not wealthy people. They don't have the money to go to a psychologist or a counselor or a psychiatrist to tell them about all the stress and fear that they have because of this pandemic. They gain solace and strength from their minister and from assembling with like-minded Christians and professing their faith in God. There is no greater need for the church than now in your hour of need. Because God will never turn his back on you. We as civil rights attorneys recognize that Pastor Spell's fight should be your fight too. Because the awesome power of the state can shut anybody down unless they have the courage to fight. Pastor Spell is in this fight with this congregation. We ask all like-minded Americans to be in this fight with Pastor Spell as well. Stand up against the awesome power of the state and tell them, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not stop our faith because it is inconvenient for you. This is the most essential service provided in Baton Rouge. Spiritual instruction and worship. It is protected by the Constitution of both the United States and the state of Louisiana. Every other essential service in Louisiana has a waiver on the 10-person rule. Governor Edwards, in his proclamation 20-33, Section 3, subsection E, says, going to and from your house of worship is an essential activity. But in the same breath, he says, but only 10 of you can assemble at one time. Now, how is this man of God supposed to minister to his flock? 9 people at a time. He has thousands of people that rely on him for ministry. Is he supposed to have a lottery and the lucky 9 get to come to church and everybody else gets to stay at home? Now, as Judge Moore said, the other stores in the community that are perceived as essential, they don't have a 10-person limit on them. Why does the church have a 10-person limit? Is it because we don't pay sales tax? Is it because we don't employ people to keep the economy going? I would suggest to the people watching here that the services that are provided in this church are more essential than getting groceries at Walmart. For those of you who are not religious but still love liberty, this is still your fight. Because Pastor Spell, standing up against the awesome power of the state, he's looking for soldiers to stand with him. Is his congregation with him? Stand and show your solidarity with your ministry. We are not enemies of science, and we will listen to our medical experts, and we will use social distancing and safeguards to protect the congregation. But by doing so, we will also assemble, and we will also exercise the religion that is guaranteed by God and enshrined in our Constitution. If Walmart and Costco and the other stores
can have hundreds of people in their store. The virus doesn't know where you are. Whether you're in church, in Walmart, or somewhere else, if you're not exercising your social distance, that virus can jump from one person to another. And as long as we protect our congregation with the social distancing, there is no reason why we should not be able to continue on and practice our faith. The governor has issued an order. In my opinion, he's got some bad legal advice. We invite him into discussions to modify his order to allow people of faith to continue to assemble and to continue to profess their faith in the way that God has guaranteed. This is the land of the free because of the brave. And the brave are those that will stand up against the state when they are wrong. We invite all people that love liberty to join with us. This is a fight for liberty. And a person that will trade in their liberty for a little bit of security is entitled to neither liberty nor security. That's Benjamin Franklin. The time to fight for your freedom is most important in times of crisis because people are scared and they'll give up their liberty because someone told them it will keep them safe. But we need soldiers of God and other people of liberty to fight for those freedoms. I stand with Reverend Spell. I stand with this church because I love liberty. God bless you.
His title is attorney, Joe Long, but he missed his calling. He's an anointed prophet. To anyone, your question to us is, you have to keep your doors open to pass the plate. Please.
Tell them how much a tent costs.
This 2 weeks ago, we complied with our governing order to go outdoors and nothing could be mandated. We spent $15,000 on that service. Since the majority of our church are non-essential workers, they have been laid off from their jobs. We received less than half of that in the offering. We paid our restaurant owners in our church to feed thousands of meals that Sunday, whose food was ruining in their restaurant because their doors are closed by the governor. We had a blood drive and received 32 units of blood. Not one praise or accolade from our governing bodies.
Not one.
Only the humiliation. Only the defamation of mine and my congregation's character that we are an embarrassment to our community.
You stand tall, son.
I am not being referred to as my title given to me by God as a pastor, but I have been relegated to a mister by our governing bodies. We love you, Chief. We pray for you, Governor and Mayor. But please respect the highest office in the land, and that is the office of the man of God. To my right, there is a lady who several years ago, she and her husband and 8 children got on a bus down off of McClellan, off of Plank Road. They had no job, strung out on drugs, alcoholism, and life was a wreck. They got on that Sunday school bus, of which 27 rolled out every week. They came to this congregation. We baptized them. They received the Holy Ghost. They have become faithful members, but not just members. Now they drive a bus. And they're responsible for bringing thousands of people to church every week. She is defending us. And sister, you're being persecuted on your job and threatened with your employment if you come back here again. Well, I want to tell her employer she is here now. So you bring it on. She is not going to deny her faith for you or your money. Most of them are pro bono and they're telling us that they're not going to charge us, but we don't expect anyone to work for free because the laborer is worthy of his hire. And we're going to pay them and we're going to subsidize them financially. As we as pastors have a command in Malachi 3 and 9 to bring, do not send, but bring all the tithe into the storehouse. You send it if you must, but bring it into the storehouse. What is the storehouse? That's where you get your spiritual food, that there may be meat in my house. So, thank you. Another question? David with the advocate at the door is asking a question. Do you have a question? We may have covered all the bases. Are we taking specific legal action? That's a question for the attorneys. The question is asked from the advocate, and is that ABC News? He's the advocate. He wants to know if we're taking specific legal action.
The pastor has been charged with 6 counts of violating the governor's order, all misdemeanors. The bill of information was filed yesterday. He has not received notice of his arraignment date. We will represent him on those charges pro bono. As for the civil action, the law requires us to give a letter to the governor and to the chief of police to give them notice for 30 days so that they can rectify their violation of our First Amendment rights. After that, we could file suit. We have not yet sent the notice to the governors, as I have not yet been formally enrolled as counsel. That one will be rectified today. When we send out the notice to the governor and the chief of police, we will make that letter available to the media. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Revised statute 13:5233, and I'll make this copy available of the law for you. Free exercise of religious, protected. Government shall not substantially burden a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a facially neutral rule or a rule of general applicability, unless it demonstrates the application of the burden to the person is both in furtherance of a compelling governmental interest and the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling government interest. As long as other businesses are allowed to be open and have more than 10 people, this church shall have the ability to stay open and have more than 10 people, because that's the least restrictive means available. Yes, ma'am. On information and belief, this church has no positive COVID-19 cases.
Just to be clear, this is Joe Long in Baton Rouge, correct?
Correct. Civil rights lawyer in Baton Rouge.
I know you, Mr. Long. I just want to make sure.
I've known you for a long time, Mr. Mitchell. How you doing? Any other questions from the press? Yes, ma'am. Yep.
I have a question for Pastor Spell. I'm hearing from, I guess, parishioners, that you advise them to not go to the hospital if they get COVID-19. Can you address that? Was that said?
The question is, did I advise any of my congregants to not go to the hospital if they get sick? That is misspoken. That is not true. I have never said that. I have never made that statement. We do say that Mark chapter 16 and 17 commands us by Jesus Christ to lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. I have been to hospitals this week. I've been to houses this week, and laid hands on people because I have a command from God to do so. We are first responders. This church is an hospital for the soul. This church is more essential to this city and this nation and the world right now. More essential than any other business. So I have not made that statement. Thank you. Question? Judge Moore, need to say anything?
One more question, I'm sorry.
All right.
In what capacity will Reverend Moore serve in the legal part of this?
Okay, he's going to speak on that.
Thank you for calling me Reverend, but former Chief Justice and Judge, I do talk to a lot of churches, but I don't carry that title. What capacity will I serve? Well, first, to be on the ground, I would have to have pro officiate, which is allowance by the state of Louisiana, and I have to submit that. So that's one thing, and if they don't, we can still help by writing briefs and Foundation for Moral Law and still assist Pastor Spell, and we will, and we don't charge for our services. This is something that we believe in. We know it's true. I could give you history lessons, but I won't do that. I simply ask you to support your pastor and help these lawyers that they will need some funding, I'm sure. But if I can get accepted by the state of Louisiana, which is always doubtful, or may not be doubtful, but we'll see, then we will certainly be here with Pastor Spell as well. Here's Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that. Judge Moore is a registered attorney in the state of Alabama in good standing. We plan to file and have an admitted pro hac vice, and we've agreed to help as local counsel to assist, which is required in the state of Louisiana. But we have every belief that as an attorney in good standing, that Judge Moore will be accepted and allowed to practice his pro hac vice as a routine matter.
Any more questions? Thank you very much.
To conclude the press conference, question? To conclude the press conference, I want to make anyone welcome who wants to attend our services. You are welcome regardless of your faith. These past 2 weeks, Roman Catholics have come into our sanctuary. Some are in here right now. Constitutionalists who are fighting for our freedoms are in here right now, who have no religious affiliation. Baptists, Pentecostals, Methodists, Episcopalians have all come to our services in the past 2 weeks. We want you to know that you're welcome here. Get approval from your pastor. I'm a shepherd. I'm not a sheep stealer. Get approval from your pastor before you come here. And that's what I have to say. Questions from the audience? If you want to, you men, speak to these attorneys, tell them about your having been terminated yesterday, please, for the sake of our children and grandchildren and unborn, please do not let this opportunity pass you up to defend the faith. Question?
I have been telling people, until this is over, this is our handshake.
Yes. So the social distancing, everybody shake hands and be friendly right now. I promise you that I'm going to shake hands. And, well, every time I speak, these attorneys get nervous, but I'm a prophet. I'm not a politician or a diplomat. So if they want to defend us, they can, but I'm neither reckless nor embarrassing. I'm a John the Baptist. Baptist. I'm an Elijah. And I thank God for the mantle that has been passed to us in the later ones. Brother BJ, question? Brother BJ is healed of cancer. He had chemotherapy. He never missed a service throughout years of chemotherapy. Never missed one service. I would have to repent to Brother BJ for him coming out all those times when he was immunocompromised through his leukemia. If I close my doors now. And we will not close our doors to the Chinese who I've spoken to today, who are assembling in your underground churches, who need finances because America's church doors are closed and you're not getting any funding. I repent to you today. I promise you we're going to get you funding. People are going to support you. If they have to support you through us, they may. To every evangelist who are traveling ministers, whose church doors are closed in your revivals, my father is one. We're supporting him financially, and other evangelists we have supported financially because your families had no income the past 4 weeks because church doors are closed. I promise you, whatever funding comes in will not only go to this litigation, but it will go to you as the presbytery to help subside you in this time of peril. God, in the name of Jesus, I want to thank you for this conference today. I want to thank you for the Honorable Judge Roy Moore and his wife who have made such a long trip at such short notice to come in defense of the faith. I want to thank you for Attorney Jeff, for Attorney Joe Long, and other attorneys here today who may or may not want to be recognized, and for our church who stands and locks arms in solidarity in defense of the gospel of Jesus Christ. For when Jude, the vestibule to the apocalypse, just before his brains were dashed out with clubs, said, Brethren, I thought it all that I should write unto you that you would earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered unto the saints. And that delivery has been entrusted to us. And as Ahab tried to purchase Naboth's vineyard and said, I will give you a better one, Naboth said, God forbid that I should sell my father's inheritance. And as there is a great cloud of witnesses in heaven's throne room looking down upon us today, I hope that we are making you complete. For the Bible said in Hebrews 11:38 that without us you are incomplete. But rest assured, O prophet of God, rest assured, O saint of God, who has fought for our religious freedoms and liberties. And to my grandfather that spent 37 months as a prisoner of war during the Korean War conflict, I thank God for the freedom and the stance that you have given me to stand up for today. In the only name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved, that is the name of Jesus Christ. And everybody said, in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. You're dismissed.